This is Democracy Watch. Marc, we have some really, really important news out of North Carolina, obviously one of the country's most important swing states, which is why the Republicans are doing what they're doing here. And that is that they are remaking the state's state election board, and they're taking the powers away from the governor and putting them in the hands of the state auditor, because that's the only statewide elected official that the Republicans could find who is still a Republican and therefore would do his bidding. That was challenged in the North Carolina Supreme Court. And so can you explain what happened here and where we stand and what's next?
Yeah, so you're exactly right. So the governor of North Carolina has historically appointed the state board of elections. In some states, you have a secretary of state who runs elections. In North Carolina, it is this bipartisan board. And the majority of the board has always been the party of the governor because he appoints both the majority and minority members. So the North Carolina Republicans first tried to shift the power to appoint the board from the governor to itself, to the legislature. And that got struck down by the state Supreme Court a few years ago when it was majority Democratic. So now they came back and they passed a law to give not the governor, not the attorney general, not the secretary of state, but the state auditor the power to select the members of the state board of elections, which means it will now have a majority Republican composition because the auditor is a Republican. And this will mean the difference between it being a pro-voting and a pro-voter suppression board. Okay, it's a very stark difference between those two things. So this got challenged once again up to the state Supreme Court because the state Supreme Court had once before rejected it being taken away from the governor, and this time on an interim basis, at least while the litigation proceeds, the state Supreme Court indicated no, this is fine. This is fine that this will be now with the auditor. Even though you are left scratching your head and thinking, why on earth would the state auditor be the one appointing the state board of elections?
So this was approved on an interim basis, but within that interim basis, we've just seen the Democratic members of the state election board get fired. And so now we have a Republican-controlled board, and they're obviously going to operate and comport themselves in accordance with how the Republicans in the state comport themselves. And so why would they allow this to move forward if the issue hasn't been fully adjudicated yet, knowing that there are already changes being made and that once the toothpaste is out of the tube and people are getting fired and new people are getting hired, it's not going to be as easy as just saying, oh, let's reverse it.
Right, because they want the toothpaste out of the tube. But they're trying to do it in as low key a way as
Right.
possible so that as few people pay attention as possible. I mean, the order we're talking about, they issued literally on a Friday night going into the long weekend, the Memorial Day weekend, because they didn't want anyone paying attention to this. They are ashamed of this, presumably, or at least they don't want there to be a lot of coverage. And by the way, I might add, the legacy media is certainly helping them out there because other than you and I talking about this and writing about it on Democracy Docket and a few other independent media outlets, the legacy media has given up the democracy beat. You know, the whole democracy dies in darkness era for the legacy media. That was very Joe Biden of them.
Right. Also, I know that you've been covering this on your YouTube channel. I don't know if folks who are watching right now know that Marc has a YouTube channel called Democracy Docket. So if you want to see more and help elevate very important content and very important voices like Marc and his team, please make sure to subscribe. I'll put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. It doesn't cost you anything to subscribe, so let's help elevate voices who are doing the work. Marc, is there a way, let's say this is challenged, even in a very far right North Carolina Supreme Court. If I'm not mistaken, this is a 5-2 Supreme Court in Republicans' favor. If they ultimately do decide, okay, we allowed this to stay in place, the Republicans change from taking this power away from the Democratic governor and giving it to the state auditor. Let's say they litigate this issue and they decide, you know what, we have to turn back and give it back to the governor, and it shouldn't be in the hands of the state auditor because, of course, it shouldn't be in the hands of the state auditor. They've already made these changes on the board. Are they capable of rolling those changes back? Are they capable of getting the Democratic members back onto the board and firing the Republican members who they've replaced them with? Or is this a situation where now they have to adhere to the least change, and so this change has already happened, so they can't touch it?
Look, in theory, they are capable of doing it. In theory, they could say this preliminary ruling was wrong and we're granting permanent relief to the governor, and the governor can then replace them with whomever he wants. But I want to just clarify one thing you said. You said this is a far right court. I would describe the North Carolina Supreme Court slightly differently. It is a very partisan court. In other words, it is not necessarily far right or far left or centrist. It is just a partisan Republican court. It is a court that where the justices run in partisan elections, and that is by design. It used to be that the North Carolina Supreme Court was nonpartisan elections, and the Republican legislature made them partisan elections to give the party disproportionate say in who its nominees are. And so, you have to see the North Carolina Supreme Court as part of, and the change in the way in which they have elections as part of a power grab by a very partisan legislature to do very partisan things. This is a legislature that, remember, said that it was passing gerrymandered maps that had two Democratic congressional seats, only because it couldn't figure out a way to pass a map that only had one
Yeah.
congressional Democratic seat.
Yeah.
And so that legislature is the architect behind the way in which this court is now elected.
Okay, so I actually shouldn't have buried the lead here, but what do these new changes to the state election board mean for 2026? What kind of power have they imbued themselves with, and how can that manifest itself? How can that present itself in midterms?
Yeah, so look, people should not underestimate the power of what election rules are. Small changes in rules are the difference between who can vote and who can't vote, whose vote is counted and whose vote doesn't count, whether elections are certified or not. I mean, in the short term in North Carolina, we saw Jefferson Griffin, the losing Republican candidate in the state Supreme Court election, try to steal a state Supreme Court seat, and he came very close to winning. And one of the reasons why he didn't win is because the State Board of Elections was still in Democratic hands, and they litigated this said, no, you can't throw out 68,000 votes of people who were lawfully able to vote. The State Board of Election will almost certainly, on a prospective basis moving forward, say that those categories of votes don't count. But they will do other things. They will change other rules. They will change other interpretations, all of which will be aimed, in my view, towards making it harder for people to vote, and in particular, harder for Democrats to win elections. And so, this is something that people need to be paying attention to. It is going to be North Carolina is going to be at the centerpiece of the fight for control of the Senate, fight for control of the House. There's a reason why the Republicans have dedicated as much resources and time and energy, not just within the state, but remember, Jefferson Griffin, the candidate there, was backed by the Republican National Committee. And in some very breaking news, the Department of Justice, Harmeet Dillon, remember her? The Department of Justice filed a lawsuit in North Carolina using the full power of the federal government to try to disenfranchise these voters.
And can you speak on that a little bit? Because this is a lawsuit that's breaking right now, where the Department of Justice is basically looking to codify or suing to be able to codify exactly the plan that Jefferson Griffin tried to enact and failed.
That's right. I mean, this just shows this is an all hands on deck moment, right? You have these voters. First, Jefferson Griffin tried to disenfranchise them after the election. That failed. There are already lawsuits by the Republican National Committee and others on the right to try to disenfranchise these voters to the courts. You have the State Board of Elections changing, and I suspect you'll see through their rulemaking power and their power to set rules, they will try to disenfranchise these voters. And now you have the Trump administration and Pam Bondi and Harmeet Dillon and the full power of the federal government filing a lawsuit by which they argue that these voters need to be disenfranchised under federal law. So it's a multi-front war against voting rights in the state of North Carolina. And look, my law firm, we're involved in some of these cases, and I can promise you we'll be involved in other fights to protect voting rights in North Carolina. And Democracy Docket covers these things, as you do, as you and I do. But, the Republicans are just showing they are relentless. They'll use the power of the state. They'll use the power of the federal government. They'll use the power of the Republican National Committee. They'll use outside groups, right-wing groups funded by millionaires and billionaires. And they will do, and then of course they have a right-wing media echo chamber. I mean, Brian, every time I stand up for voting rights in North Carolina or anywhere, I get a million articles and videos by right-wing propagandists attacking me and attacking my clients.
Yeah. Well, Marc, to that point, then, I know that a lot of people are going to listen to that, listen to the ways in which Republicans are able to wield the power of the state, the DOJ, the highest court in North Carolina, these operatives in state, operatives out of state, whether it's these paramilitary groups, whatever it may be, and they're gonna feel like it's a futile fight. Do we have the resources that we need on the pro-democracy side to be able to fight back against this? I mean, there's no doubt that watching what's happening in North Carolina, where all of a sudden the governor is stripped of his power to be able to appoint folks to the state election board, that's given to the only Republican statewide official, the auditor, that they can't look at that and recognize that there is backsliding happening in a state where there's already been a ton of backsliding already. And so again, the question becomes, do we have the tools at our disposal to be able to effectively fight this?
Look, I mean, we're going to fight it through every tool available. I mean, my law firm and I will get involved in these cases one way or another, and we'll fight these fights. But you've pointed this out before. Number one, we will never have the resources that the other side has. We'll never have the resources. The other side has understood in a way that progressives have not how important it is to invest endless amounts of money in judicial elections, in the Federalist Society, in the selection of judges, and in litigation. They're very comfortable with that as a tool, and they will always have more money. The second thing, which is something you've always pointed out to me, is that we have to almost always win. Like they have to win one of these cases. We have to win all of them to stop it from happening. And so, I don't mean to make light of it because it's not, but if I didn't laugh about it at times, I don't know what I do, because we have to fight hard, and we cannot be held back by norms. We can't be held back because a bunch of law professors don't like what claims we bring. We have to fight with every tool available in court, and we have to fight with every tool available in the court of public opinion. It's why you and I started this series, hundreds of videos ago. It's why, as you say, I created Democracy Doc at the website and the newsletters, and now we are really focusing on building up our YouTube channel, because we have to be able to fight back through every means available, including in court, including in educating people, including having public elected officials, Democrats, on our shows and showing them that it is important, that these issues are important, and that they need to be talking to independent media. The only thing I've given up on, Brian, is I've given up on trying to get the legacy media to do its part.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look, I think all of that underscores the importance of building up outlets like yours. So again, for everybody watching, one small step that we can all take, completely free, just to show some support for Marc and his team, is to subscribe to Democracy Docket. I'll put that link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. Make sure to hit the subscribe button. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Marc Elias.
This is Democracy Watch.